Charlie Manson Part 2, with me, your host, Adam, the Flying Broadcast Hawaiian, the king of the Anchor FM network, Mr. Shitbird himself, Swammy's Pappy, the post office playboy, the perpetor of the French toast chateau, Michael. And there's no time to waste, so let's get right into it. On March 23rd, 1969, Manson, uninvited, entered 10050 Cielo Drive, which he had known as Melcher's residence. This was Rudy Altobelli's property. Melcher was just a previous tenant at the property for a brief period of time. As of February of 69, the tenants were Sharon Tate and director Roman Polanski. Manson was met by Sharak Hatami, an Iranian photographer who was Tate's friend. Hatami was there to photograph Tate in advance of her departure for Rome the next day. Having seen Manson through a window as Manson approached the main house, Hatami had gone onto the front porch to ask him what the hell he wanted. When Manson told Hatami he was looking for someone whose name Hatami did not recognize, Hatami informed him the place was the Polanski residence. Hatami advised him to try the back alley, by which he met the path to the guest house, beyond the main house. Concerned about the stranger on the property, Hatami went down to the front walk to confront Manson. Appearing behind Hatami in the house's front door, Tate asked him who, he was calling. Hatami said a man was looking for someone. Hatami and Tate maintained their positions while Manson, without a word, went back to the guest house, returned a minute or two later, and then left. That evening, Manson returned to the property and again went back to the guest house. Presuming to enter the enclosed porch, he spoke to Altobelli, who was just coming out of the shower. Although Manson asked for Melcher, Altobelli felt Manson had come looking for him. This is consistent with prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi's later discovery that Manson had apparently been to the place on earlier occasions after Melcher's departure from it. And a quick reminder, Vincent Bugliosi is the district attorney that convicted Manson. So he's an attorney, he's a lawyer. You can't take everything he says seriously. He's made a lot of money off this. Not saying he's a bad person, but, he's a lawyer, and he's a really good one. And usually really good lawyers are, also liars and con artists themselves. They just took that kind of different path, in attorney world. Speaking through the inner screen door, Altobelli told Manson that Melcher had moved to Malibu, and he was no longer living there anymore. He lied and said that he did not know Melcher's new address, although he knew, and they were very good friends. In response to a question from Manson, Altobelli said he was in the entertainment business, although having met Manson the previous year at Dennis Wilson's home, he was sure Manson already knew that. In fact, Altobelli recalls he had complimented Manson lukewarmly on some of his musical recordings that Wilson had been playing, at Wilson's house when they were hanging out. When Altobelli informed Manson he was going out of the country the next day, Manson said he'd like to speak with him upon his return. Altobelli lied and said that he would be gone for more than a year. In response to a direct question from Altobelli, Manson explained that he had been directed to the guest house by the persons in the main house. Altobelli expressed the wish that Manson should not disturb his tenants. Manson then left. As Altobelli flew with Tate to Rome the next day, Sharon Tate asked him whether that creepy-looking guy had gone back to the guest house the day before. That day would be the first and last time Sharon Tate would make eye contact and pretty much meet her killer, Charles Manson. So here we are on May 18th of 1969, where finally, after a failed visit, or a failed attempt for Terry Melcher to visit the ranch and listen to Charlie sing for him, he finally gave in and visited Spahn Ranch, where, again, he wanted to hear Manson and the women sing. Melcher arranged this visit himself. Not long thereafter, he brought a friend for another visit who possessed a mobile recording unit and brought it along with him. Melcher pretended to record Charlie and the girls while they performed for him on their little stage that they had at the ranch, but he wasn't really recording it. Just this little bit of notoriety from, a producer in Hollywood gave Manson a lot of attitude and a huge head, and his followers followed that as well. And, by June, just a month later, Manson was telling the family they might have to show blacks how to start Helter Skelter, which was the end of the world. It was when the blacks take over the world, and Charlie and his family go to the bottomless pit for years and years and years. They reproduce up until they're like 145,000 strong. They emerge from this bottomless pit and they take over the blacks and the world for themselves. One day when Manson wanted Watson to take some money supposedly intended to help the family prepare for this conflict, Watson defrauded a black drug dealer named Bernard Lotsapapa Crow. Crow responded with a threat to wipe out everyone at Spahn Ranch. Manson countered on July 1st of '69 by shooting Crow at his Hollywood apartment. Manson's belief that he had killed Crow was seemingly confirmed by a news report of the discovery of a dumped body of a Black Panther in Los Angeles. Although Crow was not a member of the Black Panthers, Manson concluded he had been an expected retaliation from the Panthers. He turned Spahn Ranch into a defensive camp with night patrols of armed guards. They even quoted him saying, "If we needed any more proof that Helter Skelter was coming down very soon, this was it." Tex Watson would later write, "Blackie was trying to get at the chosen ones." Now we get into late July, where Gary Hinman comes into play. Gary Allen Hinman was a music teacher and PhD student at UCLA. He had been described as a kind, gentle soul who would often open his house up to those needing a place to stay or any good friends in general. At some point in the late 1960s, though, he befriended members of the Manson family, with some staying at his home on occasion and pretty much using it to their advantage. And here we see again Charlie preying on just a weaker, nicer person and preying on them and using them for everything they've got and just manipulating them and using them literally for everything, just living off them. Manson was under the impression that Hinman had considerable stocks and bonds and owned his property. Believing that he was wealthy, Manson sent family member Bobby Beausoleil along with Mary Brunner and Susan Atkins to Hinman's home on July 25th of 1969. There, they tried to convince Gary to join the family, which included turning over the assets Manson thought Hinman had inherited. The three held the uncooperative Hinman hostage for 2 whole days, during which Manson showed up finally with a sword and slashed his left ear off. After that, Beausoleil stabbed Hinman to death, and on Manson's obstruction. Before leaving the Topanga Canyon residence, though, Beausoleil, or one of the women, used Hinman's blood to write "Political Piggy" on the wall and to draw a panther paw, a Black Panther symbol. Again, they're trying to kill white people to frame black people. This was the meaning of Helter Skelter. This is what had to start. This is what it was. And the blacks weren't doing anything to Charlie. The blacks weren't doing anything at all on their own to start Helter Skelter. So he took it into his own hands to start Helter Skelter by doing this, by framing black people and killing white people. It worked maybe for a couple days, just because of the political piggy and the paw. They thought it was the Black Panthers. Until evidence came about, and we will get there in just a little bit. But yeah, another thing with Manson, the reason I don't believe that the Tate murders or anything like that weren't anything else except framing black people for it, there's nothing really that can prove me otherwise, because of all the other murders and that took place that we'll go over, that all this has to do with Helter Skelter and this stupid, made-up plan by Charlie Manson about the end of the world and blaming it on black people and then taking over. And it was amazing how this whole thing came about, but it all started with Gary Hinman. Bousselet was arrested on August 6th, 1969, just a couple of weeks after, and after he had been caught driving Hinman's car. So he killed the guy, stole his car, and now he's driving it around. He's driving a dead man's car around the guy he killed, and he finally gets pulled over because the car was registered to a dead person. Police found the murder weapon in the car in the tire well. 2 days later, Manson told family members at Spahn Ranch, now is the time to really start Helter Skelter. Just 2 days later, on the night of August 8th, 1969, Manson directed Watson to take Susan Atkins, Linda Kasabian, and Patricia Krenwinkel, all three girls of the Manson family, to Melcher's former home at 10050 Cielo Drive in Los Angeles and kill every single person there. The home had only recently been rented to celebrity couple Sharon Tate and director Roman Polanski, which I stated earlier. Roman was away in Europe working on his film A Day at the Beach, which he would end up later only producing. Manson told the three women to do as Watson told them. The family members proceeded to kill 5 people they found. Actress Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant with her unborn child, who was also killed. They were living there at the time. Her friends Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojtek Frykowski, who was visiting her, and Stephen Parent, who had been visiting the caretaker of the home. Atkins wrote "pig" in blood on the front door as they left. The murders created a nationwide sensation. These images you're about to see are a little graphic. If you don't like these kind of images, just fast forward until you see my face again, and then you know they're done. The next night, on August 9th, 1969, 6 family members, Leslie Van Houten, Steve Grogan, and the 4 from the previous night, drove out on Manson's orders. Displeased by the panic of the victims at Cielo Drive, Manson accompanied the 6 this time to show them how to do it. After a few hours' ride, in which he considered a number of murders and even attempted one of them, Manson gave Kasabian directions that brought the group to 3301 Waverly Drive. This was the home of supermarket executive Lino LaBianca and his wife Rosemary, a dress shop co-owner. Located in the Los Feliz section of Los Angeles, it was next door to a house in which Manson and the family had went to a party the previous summer before. According to Susan Atkins and Linda Kasabian, again 2 of the girls who were along on these murders and helped attempt them, Manson disappeared up the driveway and returned to say he had tied up the house's occupants. He then sent Watson up with Krenwinkel and Van Houten, 2 other girls, up in the house with them. In his autobiography, Tex Watson stated that having gone up alone, Manson returned to take him up to the house with him. After Manson pointed out a sleeping man through a window, the 2 of them entered through the unlocked back door. Watson added at trial he went along with the women's accounts, which he figured made him look much less responsible. As Watson related it, Manson roused the sleeping Lino LaBianca from the couch at gunpoint and had Watson bind his hands with a leather thong. After Rosemary was brought briefly into the living room from the bedroom, Watson followed Manson's instructions to cover the couple's heads with pillowcases. He bound these in place with lamp cords. Manson left, sending Krenwinkel and Leslie Van Houten into the house with instructions that the couple to be killed. Now, before leaving Spahn Ranch, Tex Watson had complained to Manson of the inadequacy of the previous night's weapon. Now, sending the women from the kitchen to the bedroom to which Rosemary LaBianca had been returned, He went to the living room and began stabbing Lino LaBianca with a chrome-plated bayonet. The first thrust went through the man's throat. Sounds of a scuffle in the bedroom drew Watson there to discover Mrs. LaBianca keeping the women at bay by swinging the lamp tied to her neck. After subduing her with several stabs of the bayonet, he returned to the living room and resumed attacking Lino, whom he stabbed a total of 12 times with the bayonet. When he had finished, Watson carved the word "war," all in capital letters, on the man's exposed abdomen. He stated this in his autobiography. In an unclear portion of her eventual grand jury testimony, Susan Atkins, who did not enter the LaBianca house that night, said she believed Krenwinkel had carved the word and not Tex Watson. Either way, it doesn't matter, but it was carved. The word "war" was carved in Lino LaBianca's stomach. In a ghost-written newspaper account based on a statement she had made earlier to her attorney, she said then Watson had carved it. By the way, Susan Atkins is just as much of a liar as Charlie Manson ever was. You can't believe anything she says. She's changed her stories up time and time and time again, just like she did there, saying Krenwinkel carved war and then changing it back to Tex Watson. It was Tex who carved it, I'm pretty sure, in the true story. But, yeah, she has made different accounts after different accounts, I think just to sell books. I truly don't believe Susan Atkins ever found God. I don't believe she was a reborn-again Christian. I think she stayed a manipulative liar her whole life. Returning to the bedroom, Watson found Krenwinkel stabbing Rosemary LaBianca with a knife from the LaBianca kitchen. Heeding Manson's instruction to make sure each of the women played a part, Watson told Leslie Van Houten to stab Mrs. LaBianca as well. She did, stabbing her approximately 16 times in the back and the exposed buttocks. At trial, Van Houten would claim uncertainly that Rosemary LaBianca was already dead when she stabbed her. Evidence showed that many of Mrs. LaBianca's 41 stab wounds had in fact been inflicted post-mortem. While Watson cleaned up the bayonet and showered, Krenwinkel wrote "Rise" and "Death to Pigs" on the walls and "Helter Skelter" on the refrigerator door. Although she misspelled Helter Skelter, she spelled it Healter, Helter Skelter. They must have been tripping balls or something when they did this. No, all jokes aside, she wrote that in blood, Helter Skelter, on the fridge. She gave Lino LaBianca 14 puncture wounds with an ivory-handled two-tined carving fork, which she left jutting out of his stomach as well. She also painted a steak knife in his throat. Planted a steak knife in his throat. I can't even read my own notes. It's crazy. Meanwhile, hoping for a double crime, Manson had gone on to direct Kasabian to drive to yet another Venus home of an actor acquaintance of hers, another Piggy, depositing the other 3 family members who had departed Spawn with him that evening at the man's apartment building. Manson drove back to Spawn Ranch by himself, leaving them and the LaBianca killers to hitchhike home and fend for themselves. Kasabian thwarted this murder by deliberately knocking on a wrong apartment door and waking a stranger. As the group abandoned the murder plan and they all ran and left, Susan Atkins defecated on the stairwell. Classy. And that ends part 2 of Charles Manson. I know this one was a lot shorter than the first one, but I wanted to make a part 3, and I wanted part 3 to be the aftermath of the murders, and we'll go over the trial, we'll go over all the Charles and all the members' imprisonment, the where are they nows, or what happened to, we'll go into detail of pretty much how Charlie lived the rest of his life in prison after these murders, and we'll talk about the court, which the court and the trial is a story in its own. Charlie Manson is a guy who could have easily beaten this rap and could very well have walked a free man for the rest of his life had he not just went along with his own bullshit. But his whole life he fed everyone this bullshit, no matter who it was. If it was a reporter, if it was a lonely 16-year-old girl, it wouldn't matter. He stuck to his word and in a sense beat the rap. And we'll go over a lot of that in part 3. It's in my opinion, it's the most interesting out of all the parts, only because I'm gonna give you a really in-depth again look of Charles Manson in prison, and you'll see the real. I'm gonna play some interviews for you. I'm gonna play some audios. Hopefully, get some videos on here if I can do that. I'll try to figure it out, but yeah, I want to show you some things, just how crazy this guy is and how interesting this guy is at the same time. So I will see you. I'm going to have that up maybe tomorrow because I know you guys waited a week for this one. And I'm just with my other job and my family. I'm just super, super busy. But I will make time to make another. It'll be another probably smaller one, 20, 25 minutes, I would say. And we'll finish up Charlie Manson, and then I will promote my next topic for Cramming Crime, the next true crime. It'll be a surprise until next episode. Until then, I will start having some wrestling. I know this is a wrestling podcast, but I'm going to start covering, daily or every other day, just wrestling news, a couple clips here and there. I know I said that I was going to do that earlier, but with this new thing, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to just see what works and what doesn't. Like I said, this is my first video. So, yeah, I will see you for part 3 on Charles Manson and the Manson family cult. In 1 day or 2 days max, I'm going to try to have it up for you tomorrow. So, happy podcasting. I hope you enjoyed number 2. Give me some feedback. Let me know what I need to change, what you'd like to see. I can try to make it happen. Happy podcasting.